here on turn to that. I want to call our commission workshop session to order. Thank you all for coming and being a part of our first session. We hope it was productive and we're able to get whatever questions and concerns we have answered and be able to have a good commission meeting on Tuesday. All right, as we look at our agenda, where we can in many ways skip line items 1 through 7. I don't think there are any pertinent issues there. In regards to number 8, I would like for us to consider adding the approval to give the mayor and city manager authority to negotiate a final settlement from Pidgeot Insurance for Hurricane Michael claim. We had a conversation on yesterday with our attorney. City manager, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yes. Just when we got this printed and sent out, I had a call from the attorney saying we're getting fairly close. We have appraisals that are out doing a lot of work. And the other side has appraisals too. And our attorney, Jeff Carter, along with Merlin Law, feel like we're very, very close to some type of settlement, but we don't want to put that number out there. Of course, we've talked about that before. So they asked that if you would give the city manager and the mayor the authority to negotiate and get that settlement, and then bring it back to you that you can approve. So that's really where we are, and that could be under consent agenda. So I would have to add that after you guys finish this meeting today.
And it'll come back for the commission anyway.
Yeah, you guys would have to ratify and
Yeah,
approve it, but it's basically like sending them to a mediation or something like that with authority to.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll add that.
All right, what I would like for us to do is we're going to come back to item number 9, because I know it's going to be a lengthy discussion. And if we take up all of our discussion on item number 9, then we won't get to items 10 through 19. And so I would like for us to just look over 10 through 19, and that way we can have the appropriate time to discuss item number 9. As relates to items 10 through 19, are there any particular questions that you might have? We're not going to call up every staff person to address each item, just as needed. We would refer to the city manager and she could answer whatever questions or direct staff to answer the question that we might have about a particular line item. So
I'd like to ask about number 12. Just want to make sure that the seniors are in agreement and pretty happy with that, because I know I'm a pal of theirs and I always try to look out for them. I just want to make sure that they had their say in their part and all of that. So.
Yeah, so let me tell you the process we went through. We had a meeting about a month and a half, 2 months ago about having some type of agreement, because we know that, commission is going to change, and we want to be able to secure our seniors to always have somewhere to be. And Kevin did draw up an agreement. I gave it to the board of the seniors there, and then they all looked at it, and then I got a text back said we're all in agreement with this. You can go on and put it on the agenda.
Wonderful. Okay, that's great.
And the health insurance, how is that as far as number 11? I'm sorry. Oh, that is, has it gone up this year?
It has gone up a little bit, and I'll just give you just a couple of highlights from that. As you know, we received $72,000 as an additional money because our staff did very, very well in terms of going to the doctor and emergency rooms. We used a lot of the MD Live, which really cuts down on those visits. Which we got some credits back and received a check for $72,000. And so Abenturist went and actually negotiated down from, I think it was like 14% increase down to a 3.5 increase for the blue plans. We also switched plans on the dental because they wanted to go up, so we went to MetLife on that, and vision, that was basically a decrease. So we're good to go on that one. And Jan, if you want to add anything, no?
I think that, of course, we're in midterm with Aventress. We have an agreement through 2023 as our broker. I think what was most important is that the first negotiated amount from Florida Blue, which is the major provider in our area, was for a 14.9% increase. And because of the diligence of our employees and following suit with some of the education about, using smart decisions, a 3.2% overall increase is pretty minor. Again, the dental went up, but that's not a big ticket item really for the city. It was almost a 15% increase, and since there's another carrier that gives a very equal product, that was also a smart move. We don't know what our return will be next year in terms of the cash back to the city. It was a tough year with COVID, so I think we need to be mindful that it might not be 72,000, it might be a little less. It was an expensive year for all insurances across the board, but I think keeping it to this level was pretty darn
Very good. We were very pleased with it. Thank you, Jan.
Any additional line items that you would like to get more clarity on?
I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't get a chance to read all the stuff in the thing, but what's number 13 with the solar lease agreement? I think we talked about that before, didn't we?
Is that the solar, and it's missing one word,
Okay.
solar tree lease agreement.
Oh, okay.
So that makes a difference now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we'll correct that, and this is really what these sessions are for, to make those corrections so that we can get it out and get it right. The solar tree agreement is that Florida Power Light is going to certain cities and finding places that they can put up solar trees. And solar trees are pretty nice in the fact that they will bring, of course, save on energy, but they also are placed in places where it provides shading, you can go and charge your phone. You can, excuse me, residents will be able to use that solar tree. We can do it several ways. We can have a bench up on it where they can sit. It actually looks like a tree, just
Right.
sits out. And so we will be one of the cities that will be tapped here in Bay County, and they approached us about, did we want a solar tree, and I thought it was a pretty awesome thing to have here. One of the great things about the solar tree is that at night it will change. It can change colors. Say, for instance, we're having Halloween, we can change it to orange, Christmas green, red, and green. So it's just like a solar tree. It takes in the energy, and then our residents can use it as a charging station.
For that? Do they pay us for that?
No, there's no charge either way. They take care of the maintenance on it. They take care of everything. They install it, everything. They just installed one in Fort Walton. They have them in Pensacola, so they're coming this way.
So they're kind of like testing it out to see how it goes.
Cool. What's it mainly going to be powering? I mean, is it just for people to plug in cell phones and stuff, or is it powering something like
You can
lights?
utilize it, yes, because it'll have a light at night. Of course, it'll bright, it'll come up at night and have a light. And we were looking at Sheffield Park as a place to be able to place it. As I looked over Florida, I saw that many of them were in their parks, in a lot of the parks. And it's just a nice attraction. Well, if this is passed next week, we're going to just go out and scout and look and see if Sheffield Park is the right place for it or somewhere else. But right now, they really like Sheffield Park being that, because usually it'll be a solar tree and they'll put concrete around it so they can have a bench there. So there's several ways you can do it.
It's cool.
Is that, my only concern about it is, what does it look like? I mean, is it gonna look kind of spaceshipy? in the middle of our park.
Doesn't have
I
any
mean-
glitter on it, does it?
Oh, what?
Doesn't have any glitter on it, does it?
No glitter on my freedom.
Actually, it doesn't. It actually enhances the park.
Doesn't,
And I started to print off some pictures of some of the areas that it does have a solar solar tree in it, and it really looks pretty cool.
I was gonna say, because that would look really good out at the reserve. I would never want to be at the reserve and stuck with my phone dead. I mean,
And we
it'd be a
will
nice place to have
and
it.
Commissioner Tennant, that's not a bad idea to check and see if it will work out there.
Mhm.
And if not, they're going to be looking at several sites, but we just wanted to at least have the agreement in place if we wanted to do that.
Mhm.
That's a good idea.
In regards to number 14, I know there was some discussion about this at our last commission meeting. Anything on this, Kevin?
I mean, we obviously didn't change, we didn't have any direction to change any of the rates. So with Stantec and I worked on this initial resolution during the course of the week. So it basically takes the rates that were presented to you during their, in their study, which they've updated along the way. And this is the initial resolution. So this directs them to get the roll prepared, get notices out. So they'll get the letter out next week. A letter will be going out to every affected parcel. And it also directs publication in the News Herald. So this is truly the first step of noticing the public hearing, which I believe it's in here. I think it's set for August 24th.
They will have one this coming Tuesday.
Well, yeah, obviously Tuesday will be,
For the
you'll
public.
adopt it's true, they're going to do a separate
At 4
public
o'clock.
input session at 4
At 4
o'clock. But what this resolution does is directs all the notices to go out and sets the final hearing for August. So that's, this is just step one of two.
And it's a
And-
communication measure as well to make sure everyone knows about it. Am I correct in that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yes.
This is the one that we give everybody at
Every
least
single person.
20 days notice, and it'll be by mail and publication. If you guys approve this resolution, then all those notices go out and we'll come back and have the final hearing in August.
And
End
then
of
does the final hearing allow the public to,
Both of them will. I mean, the public will be able to discuss this one on Tuesday and then the final hearing as well.
and if we get a lot of negative feedback, do we still have the option to back off that? Or once we say we're going to do it, we have to do it?
You can always adjust, adjust the roll and the rates. I mean, I'm not sure how quickly. It has to be turned in by September 15th. We're going to have the hearing August 24th. So if there's some direction to say, well, knock this down to, 0.3 as opposed to 0.4 for vacant parcels, then Stantec will just have to adjust that on the final roll. So that's the way this process works. You have an initial roll which goes out, and then we have the final hearing to adopt the final roll. So if there are any parcels, and they're going back again. I talked to Kelly Westover at Stantec this week, going back and checking those very large vacant parcels. A lot of them are St. Joe owned. If they're in agricultural land use code, they're exempt anyway. Now they do have some large ones that are vacant because they're adjacent to neighborhoods, which are probably intended to be a phase 3 or a phase 4 or whatever. And so they've been paying taxes on those parcels as vacant land as opposed to agricultural land. So it would apply to them. But again, it's still the 5 acre, they cap it at 5 acres. So even if you have a 150 acre vacant parcel, you're only going to be hit with the assessment on the first 5 acres.
My only concern, well, not my only concern, but one of my concerns in regards to this is when the people get their notice, when they get their notice of what their assessment will be at the end of the year, and they said that they were going to stop taking it off the monthly bill. Was that in September or October? Wasn't
It'll
it?
be succinct. I mean, because
They take one off and then they get their bill for the year. And then it's never on their bill again, their
Never.
monthly water bill.
No. Once you tell us that you have approved this and this is going forward, then we, the city, will start to make the moves to move it off of the water bill.
Right. So I think later on in the agenda, you have your rate adjustments on water and sewer. They didn't touch stormwater fee yet, but that'll come depending on whether this is approved or not
That's right.
in August, you'll come back with a resolution, presumably dropping those stormwater utility fees
That's
to
right.
zero.
And I think it's kind of important, but I want to know this too. When we send out their assessment, their first, this is what's going to be, I'm not looking forward to getting mine over here. I know that. But when we get that, is it going to show them that it is going to increase for the next 5 years and just like the flyer they gave us when they talked to us, it showed the increases for the next 5 years. Will the residents receive that so they know it's going to increase, or are we just going to surprise them next October?
No, I did talk to Kelly. She's going to add some, and there's a form letter at the back of this resolution, and so she is going to add some more. It's Appendix B, and it's dear property owner, and it goes through the process we're going through. It'll have the amount of money the city is going to raise citywide, and it'll have here's how big your parcel is, how many equivalent building units. If you've got a 4,000 square foot house or 2,000 square foot house. And it'll have the calculation of what the proposed assessment is for your property. So it'll give them all that information. She's going to add a paragraph or two explaining why we need this and all that, but it's probably not going to
Tell them it's going to
commit
increase.
to, because it doesn't necessarily have to. You're going to have to come back annually and do an annual assessment resolution every year. So you
Okay.
You have to do that.
you can kind of turn the spigot on or off and adjust it
Okay.
year to
Yeah,
year.
we had talked about that during that stormwater session at Chris Lake. We talked about that every year we can reassess it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So-
you will.
But you said something about agricultural land. We actually have agricultural land in Lynn Haven?
Yeah, it's a land use code. So if you have like some timberland or something, you get
Oh, so
tax exempt. Yeah, there's
it's not actually like farmland, like corn or something like that. It's more-
that's always
No.
it's
Yeah.
typically St. Joe timber.
Okay. Didn't know that.
Any other
CJ's everywhere.
discussion on number 14?
No.
City manager for 15, 16, and 17. Could you sort of give us a summary of what we can
Yes.
expect from those?
In 2019, the commission passed to increase water and sewer rates, and we did the study there. That was directed by the commission in 2018, came back with the study, and rates for water, sewer, sanitation were increased to 4.5. In that resolution, when we increased them, it said that, the recommendation is that they would be increased every year. We increased them in 2019. We did not increase them in 2020, and I'm recommending that we do not increase them for 21, 22.
I like that.
I'm sure the residents do too.
I know. Well, it would be
Try to
hard
get it
to
down
get
next year.
assessed for the
Yeah, we can do.
what we just talked about, stormwater, and then get assessed too for all that.
Number 18 is sort of a follow through on the planning director's part from the workshop that we had with her in regards to putting out an RFQ for a transportation engineering firm. So that's following up on that discussion. And number 19, we'll be meeting with Ms. Shea once we can get our schedules coordinated, hopefully prior to the commission meeting, to discuss the Pinnacle Housing Project. Provide a little more information.
Pinnacle came last year, and they asked for support from the commission to put in place some affordable housing. I think it was off of 24th Street. And of course, they had to go through the Florida Housing Association to get that done and be approved. But of course, it's pretty competitive. And last year, they were not named. And this is all contingent upon that they are chosen as that group that will build affordable housing. Last year, they were not chosen. I think Panama City was. This year, they're going back again and asking for that same support. Usually, it's somewhere around $340,000. But if you remember last year as well, that we went to the county and asked them to support us financially with this as a grant for this program or a loan. And it would just really be the county would loan the money, and through the city doesn't have to pay anything to give to Pinnacle.
Was that like 340,000 or something
340.
like that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the loan is just to pay back once we get the grant. that what that whole loan's for?
Well, you can actually, the Pinnacle, that there can be a percentage charged to them for giving them that.
Oh, the loan's going to Pinnacle, not
Yes.
us. Okay.
And we're not voting on this one.
No, we're just discussing.
You just,
I was very impressed with that,
Yeah.
that lady. I sat and talked to her for about an hour.
Yeah.
And
We did this before
Mhm.
with John Robbins when
Yeah, Mr.
Mr. Robbins brought it to us and we approved it.
yes, you did.
And it was all gonna go through and then they had some red tape issues and that's why they're gonna run it back through again for funding, so.
Yeah, I got a chance to sit with her too, and she gave me a lot of information and very helpful. So
Any more questions on line items 11 through 19?
No.
Anything on number 10?
I reserve the right to ask questions at the commission meeting about the senior agreement only because I haven't read it yet.
You got 3
Senior
days.
center. Huh?
It's really
3 more
just a
days.
very basic
very
lease. They don't pay any $1 a year, 10 years. They can renew it for another 10.
Mhm.
The city still pays all the utilities, all the maintenance and upkeep. We lease the space to them with the reservation that we can use it for our commission meetings and other events. So it's not exclusive to
Right.
them, but
Yeah.
yeah. So,
and they will
Cool.
find
But they
out.
just can't be booted. That was their main
Right.
concern, was that
And that
somebody would
board
come
will
and
change a
boot
lot
them.
too.
You're exactly right. That board will change.
Mhm.
Any questions on number 10?
So, the city can still use that building if they want, if somebody wants to use it for a function or anything, so.
Yes, and we're, with that particular building is because that's literally the only building we have right now in terms of meeting space. We're gonna be very frugal with that building right now until we can get a building built. But yes, we will try to lease it out, when available to others.
right. So when the senior center is not otherwise occupying it, the city reserves the right to
To lease
use
it.
it or allow others to use it, to lease it out, and also use it as the commission chamber.
How many days a week are they using it?
I don't know what they're
It's
using.
3 days.
3 days.
Yeah.
Monday,
Yeah.
Wednesday, Friday.
Mhm.
And they're limited. I mean, they're to use it for their senior club activities. So
Right.
they're not supposed to lease out their time
Right,
or anything like
right.
that. So as long as they're using it for their senior club, they're good to go. And then if they're not using it, we can open it up.
And if you haven't been by there, the number of seniors that are utilizing it and coming out and really doing some great activities, I think everyone has. You'll see how excited they are to be somewhere and have a great group of activities and fellowship. So it's something good for seniors.
Any additional questions? Moving on to number 9, ordinance number 1115. I know during the strategic planning workshop, we discussed trying to create cohesiveness, unity, togetherness. So I think as it relates to this ordinance and the other ordinances in public communication, as it relates to the commission, let's try to make sure that we're unified and uniform in our responses to particular things. So when the city manager provides us information that we can share with the public, let's try to share that information, though we can provide our own interpretations. Try to make sure those interpretations don't contradict the consensus of what we're actually trying to accomplish as a commission, because they can cause a divide in the commission and within the community. So moving forward, let's just if we have any questions about an ordinance or any of the resolutions, of course, city manager, city attorney are available to provide and staff that interpretation and application of those things. But I know we've heard a lot from the residents via email in regards to these. I don't know if you all responded or didn't respond to the various emails that we received on them. So okay, in regards to ordinance 1115, so this time we'll discuss that ordinance. City attorney.
Yeah, like I said, this is up for the second reading and final adoption. We saw it last time. Through all the discussions, we were directed to come back with a special events ordinance. This does, it defines event venue broadly. It doesn't matter if it's public or private. So again, if you've got, and again, I know there's been a lot of talk about, affecting single family houses, which obviously, we're allowed to regulate private property. We do anyway with code enforcement, building codes, law enforcement, noise ordinances, nuisance stuff. So we do, but what this, if somebody's going to have an event at a private residence, again, it's got to qualify as a special event, which means you don't have enough capacity in your home or your yard. You don't have enough parking, or you need the city's assistance for traffic control or safety or whatever. So it'd only be a very limited special circumstance where that would ever apply to a single family residence. And the way I look at it is, it's not limiting what you can do. It's actually enabling you to do something that, if you just went and did that with all that extra parking and extra people, your neighbors would be calling the police and code enforcement out there, and they'd have no choice but to shut you down because you don't have a permit and you're violating all these codes. So that's one way to look at it. Again, I think we did talk to the county has something similar. I don't think they can think of one time when somebody's used their house to such an extent that it's qualified as a special event. So it hasn't affected anybody in unincorporated Bay County that they can remember since they've had this ordinance. The beach has had some issues, and again, that's when you have a single family residential house, and it may be on the bay or on the Gulf, and you start renting it out every weekend for weddings, events, and you don't have, again, you don't have a permit for it. So that was kind of the impetus for some of their thoughts. And again, I'm not sure if we have those issues in Lynn Haven or not, or if we're expecting them. But this was just drafted broadly, and obviously, if you guys, want to direct us to narrow it down some, we can. It does apply to, obviously, streets and parks and public right of ways as well. But if you have commercial land or a lot of vacant land and it's private, not public, there's no process in place to have somebody come get a permit if they want to have a huge, 1,000-person concert out there on their, 2-acre vacant lot. And so if somebody wants to do something on their land, that's going to be deemed a special event. I think we all thought it wouldn't be nice to actually have a process, because there's literally nothing right now that enables them to do it. There's plenty that'll let us stop them. So, I mean, I do think it's useful for both private and public property. But again, if you want to narrow that down and look at single family occupied houses and whether it applies to that, then, let's talk about it. I don't get a vote here. You just tell me what to do and I'll draft it. So.
Could Chief Rainey provide some more insight on this?
Yeah, sure.
So the two incidents that this would have been very helpful would have been the Memorial Day weekend event at King Griffin, where we had no idea how many people were going to attend. So obviously, if law enforcement at that point, we could have intervened and said, look, if you're going to host something of this size in a public park, then you're going to need law enforcement. We'd need Bobby Baker and some barricades to get, the parking. And obviously that turned sour pretty quickly, and cast a pretty bad shadow on the city. And then the only other incident that was at a residence since I've been here and coming from the sheriff's office, including at a residence, was a wedding in the 100 block of Alabama Avenue. And they had valet parking, and they were parking everywhere. They called for city services. They started the event at 5 o'clock. They wanted our officer there at 7 o'clock, and it was already out of control. The officer had to walk 2 blocks just to get to the wedding party, and that's what it was. If when they asked for the services, if they went through the application process, we would have known the number. We would have known how many people. We could have made suggestions like, why don't you park at Kinsall Park and shuttle people up to your house? It's a beautiful home. It's on the water. We would have assisted them. And just like we blocked, example, 5th Street off for the July 4th parade, we could have utilized barricades around that home. But I'm telling you that Monday morning, if you would have heard the messages on my voicemail that the city allowed it and law enforcement allowed that to happen, people were carrying groceries 3 blocks into their house because that's how many cars were parked. And I think Commissioner Warwick went down and interviewed some of those people, and I'm sure he got an earful, as the earful I got. So that's the only time that I think that's important. I think about a July 4th party that happens every year on Virginia Avenue with the Messers. And I even asked Miss Messer, how many people did you have there? And she said over 50. There was no issue whatsoever. They didn't block parking places. They didn't do anything. But when you get over that 100 limit and you're trying to pack them into city streets, the chief of the fire department and the ambulance, there would have been no way for us to get in there to rescue somebody or get there. We would have had to walk blocks to get in. So that would be the only concern, would be a large wedding or a large something of that nature. But again, if they would have came to us and laid all their cards out on the table, we could have helped them and made that a much better, pleasant experience for them. Because I'm telling you, the neighbors down there were not pleased. And I was not pleased that Monday morning with the 8 messages that I had. And I think the city manager got it also. So any questions?
I just want to say, we have a great police department. I hear great things all the time. And I think you guys are on top of it. And I understand completely. My main concern about home parties is fire safety, that the fire truck can get down that road and that the police officers can get down that road if there were trouble. What you're describing, however many years ago that sounds like that was way out of control. I definitely, this is no secret to anybody, I am definitely against permitting private people on private property, but I can see how crucial it is to have this ordinance in place for public property, for our parks and everything else. Now, I was under the impression the Memorial Day thing had gotten a permit from Ty Ferris. They had not gotten a permit. We didn't know who it was.
We didn't have there was nothing in place, and that's
Right.
that's what stemmed a lot of this.
Right.
Well, and I have to say this.
You have a permit to reserve the park,
Park.
but there's no regulations on what you do
Screening.
at the
Right.
park.
Right. Well, so they did have a permit to come on Memorial Day?
There was no permit at all. We have what's called a community pass. It's software that they go in and they reserve city facilities, and we just depend on them for them to tell us what they're going to do.
Oh,
So there's
and
not a permit in place at all.
Okay.
And we approve it or
Do
deny
they pay
it.
for that?
Excuse me?
Do they pay for that?
Currently, right now, for parks, they do not. We just need to know because we don't want 2 groups showing up at the same time trying to have a event there. So that's the biggest thing. So we depend on them to tell us what's going to be going on.
Mm-hmm.
And we can sometimes look at an event if we read it correctly and say, this is probably going to be larger than what they're thinking simply because of these particular factors.
Mm-hmm.
And it can start out, and it did, my understanding, it did start out that way, but as it got darker, it got larger. And so I think that that's where we need to be proactive as a city to try to help. That's all we're doing. We're not trying to regulate, what people do on their private property or even wanting to put any type of event in the park. We just want to keep our citizens safe. That's the bottom line, and that's where I am.
And I think that the guide is if they ask for city services,
Yeah.
like law enforcement, then obviously that's where we need to, step in and ask and to help them prepare. Because like I said, there is beautiful homes on the bay. I mean, if I got a boat and I would, that's a great place to hold a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was just a bad plan on their part and just upset an entire neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and it was not safe any way you look at it.
Back to the Memorial Day thing weekend, I heard great compliments about you. I heard great compliments about when you got there, things straightened up. But I also heard that we had state troopers there, we had Bay County sheriffs there, that people were there carrying automatic weapons over their shoulders. And according to Facebook and Mr. Ferris, Ty Ferris published, it was a kids' party. There were no kids there except kids hiding in the back of their homes. Those people that were there were threatening the people who live around Kane Griffin Park, coming up to them on their own property, tell them they're wrong color, they need to go back to their neighborhood, and they go, I live here. Things like that, threatening to beat people up. That thing was way out of whack, and they said about 80% of those cars that were at that event, out of 1,000 people, they said, and I think you even stated it looked like over 1,000 people, they were from Texas and Georgia. They weren't from here. They weren't from here.
I don't know if you're aware,
But-
there was a shot fired.
Yeah, two
And-
women were fighting, and somebody, you know.
So yes, we are gonna come in. If
Yeah.
he was in the military, if you go into a hot zone, you don't want to be, you know,
And you got it cleaned up fast once somebody
Quickly.
called.
Right.
Once somebody called, and I think that was like, what, 7 or 8 o'clock at night?
When I
It
went
was
to the
late.
event at 5, there were no issues with the event at that
That's
time.
Mhm.
I mean, it was,
And I think that's the email I sent to you guys.
Were that
Just-
many, were that many people there when you went at 5?
when I went there at 5, maybe 200 to 300 were there when I went at 5, and it was a mixture of adults and children. Splash pads were being utilized, basketball courts. Everybody was friendly, welcoming. So not really sure as I shared with the city manager, because she, of course, called that night as the event went on. Like, I'm not sure really where the turn came as it got later with the event. But I met with the event coordinators when I got there, and again, everything was literally as the event described, peace in the park. So it was a good event when I went.
Well, my hat's off to our police department because they did exactly what needed to be done. I think if we put this permit, and I think we should put this in place so that people and organizations like that know that we have it in place. Had we had a permit or pulled on that event, our police department would have been out there just surveying
would
the
have
issue
already
all
been out
day
there.
long to see what was going on. My heart goes out to those residents that live there because I've heard nightmare stories. It was something out of a newsreel from San Francisco or something like that. They were putting their children in the back of their homes so they couldn't see out the front of their house. It was that horrible.
I think too, for a community pass, just so everyone understands that program that we use, Ty uses, we depend on them to tell us what's in there. And I think for that particular one, Ty, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was going to be a family event. This is my understanding what was put in there. Family event, maybe 200 to 300 people, and basically just peace in the park.
Yeah.
We can't tell anything from that.
No, didn't you have a DJ though who pulled the permit or came and told you about it?
There was a young
His
lady.
name.
There was a young lady and a gentleman that lived right across the street that actually applied for it. And since that has happened, we have modified our event process and reservation process to add multiple questions. Will there be music? Will there be a DJ? Will there be parking? Will there be? I mean, we're trying to get a much better handle on it so we avoid anything like that in the future.
Yeah.
they had an event Sunday and we required 2 law enforcement. And I talked to Scott Daly and he even told me he lived right across the street. He said it was like night and day.
I'm gonna bring this back in a little bit because I don't think that the citizens are so much worried about the parks. I
That's
think that's a good
No,
thing.
we need that.
Public facilities, public parks, we need what's on the books there, I think. Where the hesitation's coming, of course, as we all know, is with the private residences. And my question is, for the attorney, a couple of things I think would alleviate this. First, I think we should waive the fee for residents they should just have to come get a permit. And the reason I say that is we've had one instance in which a residence needs one. So let's just get rid of that fee. We can keep the fee for the public parks and facilities, but for residents, let's not do that. That's just too much in my opinion. I sympathize a lot with what the people have written. I think we need to limit government instead of so much being more proactive. So my thought on that was, as opposed to saying you have to have a permit if you're going to use city facilities or city resources, why don't we turn the wording around to where if you have an event and you don't have a permit and city resources are being utilized, then there will be fines imposed, right? That way it compels them to come get the free permit if they think they may need it. Because if they have the permit in place, then there's not going to be fines imposed because they came and got the permit. So all you're doing is turning it around to where we're not being proactive on private citizen, but if they're not proactive, there could be consequences. Does that make sense? And I think that would alleviate the entire thing. That takes the city completely out of it. We're not going to do, you come get the permit if you think you need it. If you don't come get it and you wind up needing resources, it's going to cost you money. Now, the permit's free. It takes 5 minutes to come up here, get your permit, tell us you're having a wedding. We can post a policeman up on the corner, make sure things are okay until they're parked or whatnot, and we're good to go. But that way, the citizens don't feel like the city has something on the books to where if we catch you, you know, you're in trouble or whatnot, or you have to get a permit or you're in trouble. I mean, that's
kind of what you're saying, though, in a way. You're saying if you don't pull a permit and you get caught, we're going to fine you and we're going to, you know.
well, no, but right now you can't even have the event without a permit if we go with the way it is.
Oh, I know. I hope we don't go the
So
way it
that's
is.
what I'm saying.
I can't
Let's
handle
get rid
the
of
email.
that. Let's get rid of the fee. That way that it doesn't drive anybody off from coming and getting it. I mean, you know, if you're having a wedding with 250 on one of these beautiful houses on the bay, right? How hard is it to call up city manager or somebody and say, hey, look, I just need to pull one of them free permits. We may have 100 cars, and I want us to let the city know. As opposed, again, to the city already having something on the books to where you're in trouble if you don't call us. I mean, that's I don't like that language. You know what I mean? That's how I'm interpreting it. But I think those two simple things would alleviate a lot of the concerns because people just don't want a nanny state. And I don't think anybody at this table wants a
No.
nanny
No.
state. So, I mean, I'm
No.
not saying that.
I'm glad to hear you say that because I do agree with a lot what's in the ordinance, and I do understand the concerns of the residents as far as government overreach, and as you all probably did too, I got multiple emails, phone calls, Facebook messages, and I tried to send the message that what the intent of the ordinance was, and you know, I let them know that hey, this is probably going to be very rare circumstances. And they're like, well, it's very rare circumstances. Why are we making a code for it? And so this is the picture I tried to paint for them, and this is how I truly feel. Chief is right. I went out to Alabama, talked to the residents there, and vast majority of them were like, yeah, it was bad. Basically, the way they portrayed it to me was they all parked on one side of the street and ended up becoming basically like a one-way, but it was a narrow one-way. And they were like, you were lucky to get just one small car through there. And sometimes I'd ask them this, and sometimes they would tell me this even before I asked. If you had to get an ambulance or a fire truck through here, you wouldn't have been able to do it. And that's what we're trying to prevent here is an incident like that. And what I start thinking in my head is I can't remember the young girl's name, but the one that at the elementary school that the fire department went there. She had a heart problem, whatever, and it was a matter of seconds that the opportunity to save her life was very narrow. And if you had an event like that and you didn't have the opportunity to do that, it could cost somebody's life. And that's the last thing we want. We had enough black marks and or black eyes in Lynn Haven. This is another black eye I would not want to get. And not only that, I couldn't live with myself if I knew a decision that I was part of cost somebody's life. I wouldn't be able to live with myself, and I could not look myself in the mirror and say I'm an effective commissioner. So I'm not saying. I think that's why I'm glad to hear you say that because I do think some of the stuff we might be missing and needs to be reworded a little bit. And I found a couple things that I would like to look at, and we can discuss in a little bit here. But something needs to be in place, and maybe just some of the stuff needs to be reworded, and some of the things like the suggestions you talked about. And
Maybe it should say you have to have a permit on dead end streets. You're going to go down by the water and you can only get there from one street. That creates a problem right there. Example, I got to point out the other flip point of that. We cater a lot of weddings and stuff out at the country club.
mm-hmm.
They're all on the what? Those people have Kentucky Derby parties that are 200 people or more.
But they have the parking and the capacity to handle it.
Right. They do. But I feel like it's not, they're included in whatever we write here. I mean, everybody's included in it. And like I said, I'm up front. I'm all for having fire and police capabilities wherever they're going to go. But you said that's the only incident you've had in all the years you've been with all, yeah.
In 29 years. Yeah.
29 years. It's only been one incident.
So I'm saying we waive the fee, we let the people. You see, the thing is if we change it like we were saying, we wouldn't know if there was a big event of 200 people as long as there was nothing that got out of hand or out of control. We would never even know it. So but the way it's written now, they're automatically in violation for not having a permit. You know what I mean? So I think we just switch it around.
You think about, you know, I call them, you know, high school cake parties. I mean, we'll show up and we clear the road, we clear the streets, and they move on. And there may be 50 to 100 people there, you know, but we get the call and we disperse them. I mean, I can't count the number of those I've dispersed.
Sure.
And they listen and they move. But when you have a 5-hour event at a house like they had down there, that's what we really truly, I would like, you know, what Commissioner Aldridge is saying, at least have the knowledge and let us utilize our resources to help you conduct this event.
Right.
And the country club has been doing it for years. I don't know of any complaints. You know, they park their people, they do a great job. So, you know, I just think it's one of those situations that, you know, if they need city services or if they're requesting city services like law enforcement or barricades or help, even at a residence, I think that's when we need to help them. You know,
Wouldn't we do that
over,
now?
over capacity. So like the country club, again,
Right.
they might have a 750 person capacity. They probably never, any weddings never exceeded that. So they would never need a permit unless there's something that's beyond their capacity.
Another example I got with the fire chief, the garden club's capacity is 100. Tell me where you would park 100 cars at the garden club.
There's no place.
Right.
On Highway 77.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
And some of the responses, I mean, some of the responses I got were positive, and some of them, I had questions like, well, don't we already have laws in place to enforce that? But, and we do, I believe,
Yes.
but the problem is, if it's too late, then
It's too
it's
late.
hard to enforce it, you know?
We don't have enough records in Bay County for what happened in Alabama having it.
Right.
You don't have enough what?
Records.
Pull cars.
Records.
Pull
Records.
But I think the city attorney was saying if we do need to
Pull your car.
try to find a way to be proactive, because if we're reactive with the laws we have in place, then basically the event gets shut down and dispersed. So if we don't have anything, and then if it's a noise ordinance or something like that, the laws that are in place are actually there to disrupt and to disperse the event, not necessarily to say, hey, how
To
can
permit
we?
it. Right. And that's
This
where
is-
I think we're looking at it from the wrong, or
This
from
is
the other
all
way,
for-
basically. Yeah, we do have laws that we can absolutely enforce to shut anything down.
Right.
We have all the
It doesn't-
nuisance
This,
laws there.
this is to allow people to exceed
Right.
their capacity.
So if somebody wants, such as the Alabama event, if they wanted to have one, right now, the way we have it, they don't have an option. This gives them the option to have the event by
Legally,
coordinating with the
Right,
city.
and coordinates with an application with the city manager and gets the,
Right.
the necessary
And-
resources in place.
And this is the other thing I responded with. I said, you know, me personally, I could care less what you do in your personal home. I could care less. I don't even care if you exceed whatever the rated capacity or whatever, however they come up with what the max amount of people you're supposed to be in your house. I could care less. Where it comes a concern for me is when it starts affecting the safety and security of the residents. And that's my concern. And I just want residents to understand, I do hear what they're saying, but at the same time, I want to protect the residents and make sure that we don't have an incident. If someone died on my watch, like I said, I would not be able to live with myself.
And that is exactly where I am with Commissioner Ward. That's my total feeling.
I think a lot of the kickback that I've been getting is the application. People don't think they owe the city what they're eating and who their entertainment is and all that. They don't think they owe that explanation to anybody.
And I'm okay with that. You know,
It's
if
just
we want to
invasion
have
of
it where
privacy.
they don't want that on the application, I'm okay with that. I don't think that we need to know that.
Mhm.
No,
I think that's more, I think probably when that was originally written like that, it was probably more designed for the public part, like the parks and that, as
Facilities.
opposed to private property. But yeah, I'm good
Right.
with doing away with that for the application for residential.
Residents.
So we need to kind of spell that out.
Yeah, and we obviously need their name, address, basic contact
Basics.
information, date of the event.
Maybe
But we don't need to
anticipate.
know all their vendors or entertainment, and I agree with that.
And I think we need to make sure we're delineating between the parks and the public facilities. We're all, I think, good, and the public included is good with the parks and public facilities. So everything in the discussion really at this
It's
point is
about
private
private property.
residence. So,
I did course, you know me, I went around and used my friend Google and tried to find as many municipalities that have anything like this, and tried to see if there's another process besides a permit, and I couldn't find any. And that's not just to include Florida, but other states. But there are many municipalities that have ordinances in place where they require a permit for a special event, not just on public, but on private property also. And this is one wording I found, and maybe we can go off of this. This is actually in Miami, and it says, no person shall hold a special event which obstructs, closes, or causes to be obstructed or closed any street or sidewalk or park in the city, or impede the general movement of vehicular or pedestrian traffic without first having obtained a permit approved by, and then goes on from there. You know, and
That
That's
makes the owner responsible for the traffic and all of that, and I think they should be, wherever they live.
right.
And if you think about it on a private residence, from the city standpoint, we're not going to care about your capacity in your home or your yard. It's going to be, where are you going to park these people?
That's right.
You're going to be on the right of way. You're going to be on your neighbor's
Well, I
yard.
think a lot
It's
of
all about how it's
everything
written
I got
there,
from
'cause-
all the emails is that people are okay with this thing being a public thing, but the private residence, is separate. So why are we trying to put private residence in this ordinance? We might need just a separate, small thing to say that if they held an event by observation of over 50 or 75, then they would be,
Responsible.
and they would be responsible and in violation. And they can register if they wanted to do it, that there would be make it a separate thing. If you need to regulate private residence at all, just strike private residence from this.
The word private residence is
It's not
nowhere
in
in
there.
here.
No, it's not in the
Okay.
ordinance. Not
But
a single time.
still, it
Just
doesn't
says private
doesn't exclude it.
It don't say
Is
private
what
anything.
I was getting from
Right.
everybody.
And
We've
one,
stated
does
over
not
and over,
exclude
he
it.
says
Well,
private
he
all the
said,
time.
yeah, I'm talking about on paper.
one
Yeah,
easy
on
fix,
paper.
one easy fix is just, without having to change the rest of the ordinance, is under event, the definition of event venue, which is broad, is add some language like that, where it should only be considered a private residence, or single, however you want to call that, single family residence. Should only be considered an event venue if, and you add your language, you're going to exceed and obstruct the public right of way, or use that language that you just quoted.
Right, and the other suggestion I was gonna make is, under the special event definition, they got like, A, if you exceed the venue capacity, B, if you exceed the parking capacity, and then C, if you require city services. What if we did away with A and B and just left C? If you require city services, then you need a special event permit.
Now, what we do.
Well, but under whose determination? The chief might have thought they needed city services, but the event.
Yeah, if you do away
Holder
with the
doesn't.
capacity of these parks.
Not the parks.
No, we're not
I
talking
guess
about the
that would
city
fall
park.
under
Yeah, yes,
Mhm.
you need to,
Yeah,
The
well,
city
that's
parks
true.
and all that, I think we should have control over those, and the amount of people. And I'm not gonna change the subject yet, but I wanna throw it out here, because I do wanna talk about this, and that's that pop-up. I call them pop-ups, or, what do you call it in there? You call it something, it's a surprise, and
Yeah.
people show up, and all of a sudden, over here, it was brought to my attention that, like the seniors years ago, and I didn't know this, seniors over here years ago used to all go over to the park and eat lunch and stuff like that. And there would be way more than 50, probably closer to 100 or 80 or whatever. That type of thing. I think the pop-up, that kind of concerns me too. But I understand why it's in there, because we don't want to happen what happened Memorial Day. That was supposedly going to be a few people, and it turned out to be 1,000. So there has to be a happy medium to word it so that, and no offense to you, but you know what people are saying to me,
Yes.
not to you personally. It's about the legal jargon. It's about when you start writing things, and I realize that's your forte, and you went to school to learn how to do that. But it's about, they read this stuff and they go, oh my God, because it doesn't say they can't. It doesn't say they can. You say it in a way that, well, you could be in trouble and you might not be in trouble. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, we drafted it to
yeah.
be broad, and then, like I
Yes,
said, if you
to be
guys want
broad.
to direct us
And then
to
you
narrow it.
guys tell us whether or
Absolutely.
not you want to bring it in. And one of the things that we also need to just remind, when we bring it to the first reading,
Yeah.
we're looking for your input.
Right.
To go back and change it.
Right.
So if you don't give us any input at the first reading,
Mhm.
then we assume that you are fine
Right.
with it until we start getting phone calls. And so it would be
Mhm.
helpful to have that input at that first reading, making, so the residents can hear those changes as well,
Mhm.
that what you don't like, and then the residents already know, hey, we're working to make it better, and then we're going to bring it back to you, and go from there.
You don't get the public outcry till after the
No,
first
until
reading.
after they hear
Well,
it.
but now
But-
going
You know
forward,
what I
now that
mean?
we're having these agenda workshops,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you will
But
get
if you
it
don't
prior
say
to the first
anything,
reading.
but
So,
if you don't say anything at the first reading, then the public doesn't know that you have some
That's-
yeah.
And not to Kim Horn, but I think that's why it's a good thing we're doing what
That's
we're doing.
exactly right.
I think this gives us a good time to
That's
discuss this and hopefully come up with a good solution.
I like Pat's idea. I love your idea. At least to cut all the hoopla, to cut all the,
Exclude private residents.
yes, just
with-
have this be
Unless
for
it,
parks
unless it,
and stuff.
You talking about this right here?
Yeah.
And
Right,
then
right.
rewrite one for private if there's, like, if you get caught having a party. I mean, heck, I've called the police
well,
on
just the
parties next door to
planning
my
a
house.
private event, just a planning a private event and ordinance, like, cause so the city can help control the streets. We have narrow roads, man. If the city can control that, and we can still get fire department and EMT into the residents around a party, that's important,
Mhm.
you know?
And let's do some public education for private parties,
Yeah.
like on Alabama Avenue or whatever. I mean, I've seen lots of parties on Virginia.
I
And
don't
people
want to know
behave,
what
they-
people are doing in their houses, as long as it doesn't affect the people around them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that, like I said, I used an example of my neighbor was having her party for her little girl and having people. She was like, "We're gonna have people parking on the road." I said, "Don't. I got a bigger driveway. Just park them in my place, you know."
Right.
And neighbors are neighborly like that.
Yeah.
But it needs to be acknowledged so in the future, we don't get our police department and we don't get surprised with stuff like that privately, which I should think we should, you know, from everything I've heard from the residents is exclude private residents from this. This is for our parks and our city property. So, but
but it would
there
also
needs to be a,
commercial and
yeah, but there needs to be something in place for the private residences too, that,
The language.
so we
that
should,
he
I don't
had-
think we should merge the two here.
I agree.
So-
I agree. I
I
don't
mean,
think they should be
Well, I
together.
mean, could we have it in there and just spell out
like I said, I mean,
residential household or something?
well, under event venue, we could just add a sentence that event venue shall not include a
Private residence.
a
I
single
agree.
family
Just
I
simple,
agree.
simple
Yeah.
sentence.
Simple.
Yeah.
instead of-
a single family home.
And then it makes the private
Or you want it-
homeowner feel like
But-
they have protections,
but-
which they do.
Well,
But-
well, this does not apply to
That's what I'm
a
saying.
private single
Yeah,
family
I
home.
think it's a
Period.
simple
And it's
fix.
right here in the very first paragraph, and you know it. You don't have to keep reading. And then, like Pat said, with something like that, maybe if we do need something in the future for private, we can add your language. Because if we put that in there now, then you're going to have the question of, okay, well, as a private homeowner, I know I don't apply unless I'm going to obstruct all this, stuff, and then you're right back into
We've
this.
got enough nuisance laws to react to anything that's done in private residence. But it would be nice to know that if they were planning something as large as what we've experienced and that they could come to the city. It doesn't necessarily need to be a permitting thing. Just maybe an ordinance to say if you're, or a suggestion to the public to say if you're having something and it's going to affect your neighbors, contact the city, you know?
That
Well,
clause is in there where
Right.
they're asking for city services, which would prompt us to ask crowd size.
Right.
Mhm.
So the way it's written, and I do like the
So-
language that
so-
he has.
So in the lieu of an event at a private residence large enough, should contact the city.
I think exactly the way he read it out of the Miami,
Oh, the
Oh yeah, the
Miami
Miami,
thing.
that definitely needs to go in
that
there.
would
Yeah.
solve the issue.
Mhm.
And then the private residence would solve the issue that he's adding.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't.
I think so, too.
Those two things would.
If it doesn't pertain
Yep.
to, now, are you feeling private residence or private property?
Same thing,
Same
isn't
thing.
it?
It's
Wonderful.
different.
No,
Oh, I don't know.
you
You
could
can
have-
own,
you could have
you
land.
can own a lot of land and not
Yeah.
have a house on it.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
But
what
also,
you're saying.
it'd be very difficult to ever trigger this ordinance if you have large
Land.
vacant commercial piece or a,
Yeah.
like the Sutherland Event Center or something like that, and they've got plenty of capacity, plenty of parking, they're not going to trigger this.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's for people who are going to get it over their capacity, over their parking, need city services, come get a permit. There's nothing to it. So, yeah, I think it would still apply to private commercial parcels.
But, or just private, somebody's got a quarter of an acre right outside of, right over the bridge or something like that.
Yeah, it would apply to them, only if they exceeded what that piece of land could
Yeah,
handle.
yeah.
That's it.
Wonder
That's the
sometimes-
thing. I mean, it's not going to come into play that often. Unless
I like
it's-
the idea of
So we
separating.
add that and then put in the wording for exclude.
We'll exclude. So under
We'll
event
exclude.
venue, we'll exclude the private residences.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then you can send me that language.
Do me a favor too, Kevin, if everybody agrees with this, because I do agree with what a resident brought up the other day, last Tuesday. I was trying to find where it was, where they said you can't organize. Let's just take that word organize out.
Oh yeah, that was
Oh, yeah.
With Ron Scray brought it up, and I agree with him. Let's
Yeah,
just
that
take that
didn't
out.
add
We'll just
anything.
scratch it.
their person shall
The other words are okay.
stage, promoter, conduct. Okay. Yep.
I bet Pat's getting nervous. His dance parties get out of control sometimes at his house.
No, we dance.
We dance.
Then you send me that language
Okay.
before Tuesday.
Also on A, we're
Right after this,
on the second page where it says a small event being an event with an anticipated maximum attendance at any point of time of 100 or more. So,
Or less.
or 100 or less. So that includes everybody. 100 or less means,
Yeah, that's one thing I
one
was
to 100.
going to bring up. I think we have for our city parks, if you're going to exceed 50, you're presumed to be a special event. So I think anything 50 and under, and then under any circumstance, should absolutely be excluded. I mean,
Absolutely.
you
That's not
can
that
fit
many
50
people.
people.
Is
So much 50 people in here.
I'm trying to remember when I read it, is there a difference in the process if it's a small, medium, or large event?
there's
The
a
only
different
difference is the rate,
time
right?
frame. Well, and notification, 45 days.
Yeah, give the city
Ten.
notice.
Okay,
Yeah.
that is different.
You can kind of do it last minute. So you want to do between 50 and 100 is small. And so that way anything
51.
51.
Can't overlap
anything
numbers.
under 50, we're not going to get involved in that.
No.
I mean, I can't think of any scenario, honestly.
Yeah.
Can you? I mean,
No.
No,
So what are you gonna do? Sit out front and count people going up?
That's what I'll.
No.
No, there's many
No.
count, just.
Pardon me.
Is it when we still encourage them to get a community pass for 50? None like if I want
Well,
a birthday party at the.
Yeah, and that's a totally
Yeah.
separate.
Yeah,
That's
they'll-
totally separate, handled by the parks
the
people.
park.
If you want to reserve a birthday party for 20
Mhm.
people, you still
They'll
need
still
to
have
come
to
and
go through
reserve the
community
spot.
pass,
But,
am I
but you're
correct,
not a
Ty?
special event unless you're over 50.
And you know something, Mayor, too, I was thinking about this since you're a pastor. Say you wanted to have some of your parishioners over to your house. That would apply to you too. I mean,
I would just ask all my neighbors if I could park in their yard.
there you go. Well, and I would too.
Yeah.
I mean, I would make all the parking arrangements, but we're trying to, this would apply to anybody in
Yeah.
the city limits. I mean, I don't know. I feel like Pat, I feel like this ordinance should be totally different than the private one. That way we can clear this up. I mean, people are coming out of the woodwork. I've had over 150 emails and phone calls, and it's all the legal jargon that scares people. You can leave out, and you know this, it's your profession. You can leave out one word or add one word and change the entire thing. And that scares people because we're not all attorneys.
How about we add exclude private residences, and then it
Then
should
Maybe
eliminate
that's
all the all the fear.
Right.
When you do
If
that.
it,
That one
takes
sentence.
out-
Instead of
Takes it all
rewriting a
out.
whole nother.
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
It seems.
we could say excluding private
That's what, yeah,
residents.
we've already
That's what they
decided that.
want.
That's what.
We've already decided that. We
And
exclude private residences.
One call in 30 years, man, that's good as far as I'm concerned. One call in 30 years.
Mhm.
I'm glad it's not once a week.
Are we still wanting to do away with the rates that you were talking about?
If
Well, if
it
it's going to
doesn't
exclude
include,
private residents, then
You won't need a
we
permit
won't need
anyway.
it.
if it includes, if it excludes private residents, we've just
There's
taken
enough
all the
nuisance
fear
laws to
away for all the
control
people.
something, but if a private residence is gonna have a large event, they should request city services accordingly, but
Well, they can always
it shouldn't be about this. This should be about our parks and whatnot, so.
And you know what? People call here. I've called here. Got a neighbor who likes to party well into 2 a.m. And I even let the 10 o'clock ordinance thing go, and I'll, if I can fall asleep, but if I wake up and it's still going on at 2, then I call. But if we exclude private property, I think everyone will be happy. Everyone will be happy.
Leave a broad definition, so
That's bad.
like the Miami thing there, that, you
So
know,
if we put that definition in there, I guess I'm kind of confused, because if we
Yeah.
exclude them private residence, that means if you have a private event at a private residence and and you end up blocking roadways and that, do you still need to get a special event permit?
I think, I want to weigh in on this.
Yes,
If-
please.
If you put what he's talking about in the ordinance, that it excludes private residents, and I get a complaint from Ms. Tender about a road being blocked, let Florida state statute handle that portion of it. We can go down there and say, look, you're blocking the road. We need these cars moved, these cars moved.
Mhm.
And that way it won't be so complicated by trying to put your language in there. Because there are state laws that.
Yeah, we've got ordinances that say you can't block
We got
the,
ordinances
can't block
too,
the right.
already in place.
And
So I
we've
think
got
if
a good police department that will go and take care of it right then, and it doesn't have to scare everybody. And you know what? People are complaining. It's not even people having parties. The people I'm hearing from are not people that are having parties. They're people that are afraid that we're starting to take their rights away. And that's a scare thing.
again,
And they
you
think
exclude
government's
the private-
overstepping.
Private residents, let law enforcement and our ordinance deal
care
with
of that
a
stuff.
traffic complaint. Because like I said, on July 4th, I drive the perimeter, and there are huge parties that go on to watch the fireworks around the park.
Mhm.
And you know, and we don't have an issue. If we get a car moved, they move it for us.
So you're happy with all that?
If you just take out private residents, I'm 100%, you know, I think it's going to make everybody happy.
Mhm.
And then I think also it's going to allow us, if there's a problem, to respond and correct the problem. However, if you're going to have a 300-person wedding, you ask for city services, then that, at that point, that's when we need to
Yes.
help them. And I don't want you, and what I mean helping them is helping them to get the parking, like at one of our parks, and then,
Mhm.
you know, bring them in a shuttle so you don't shut down the neighborhood like you found out, you know, over there. So
Yeah.
that's what, it's just educating them once they apply for it. That's all it
That's the
is.
key word.
We want to help you if you're going to have a large event on the water or wherever you want to have it.
So Chief Ramey, why not put out some PSAs from our police department, you know, saying, here are some suggestions if you're having a private party. And help educate. The word is educate.
Right.
And help, you know, shuttle your guests. Ask your guests to, you know, ride together instead of everybody come one person in a car. And just
Utilize
common
your
sense
neighbors.
things,
I mean, have
but-
your neighbors. I mean, everybody, I mean, I think the city has so much love for one another that if you say, hey, we're going to have people over, do you mind if I borrow your driveway? I don't know of anyone that would say absolutely. I mean, like, you know,
Mhm.
Commissioner Pernod said. So I
Mhm.
just think taking that one or add that language
Mhm.
of the private residence, and then I don't even think we need yours. Let Florida state statute and the ordinance. We'll be able to do that. You throw a phone call at us and we're going to come
Mhm.
and say, hey, you mind moving a few cars so we can get a fire truck through here? 99% of the people are not going to, you know,
Yep.
absolutely.
And then
Right, yeah.
that gives the resident, if anybody tries to say something, say, look, it says right here on the ordinance,
Right.
excluding private, they have
Right.
something to stand
I
on.
don't need a permit.
Right.
But again, you're going to fall back and you're going to have to comply with all of your,
And I promise
Sure.
all of your
you,
codes and parking.
even
So we're going to shut
Absolutely.
those down. We're not going to.
the host of that event,
Right.
if he had to do it over again, I promise you, he would have done things differently.
Mhm.
Sure.
So.
And it does make me feel very comfortable, Chief, that, and I think it does everybody, that there's only been one. I mean, you look at the, you know, the number of that over the course of years, the course of weekends or whatever it may be, that is a very, very small percentage. So,
any private event of a certain size,
mhm.
you know, we should encourage them to contact the city for services and so.
Mhm.
I don't think we don't need to put any language like that in there here, do we?
No.
No.
Because
Just needs to
that's
say
so
does not apply
soft,
to
but
private
that's just
parties.
yeah.
Or
You
private
think about
property.
Super Bowl parties, I mean, all kinds of parties you
Yeah.
see, large, you know, and again, we don't, knock on wood, we don't have those issues. I mean, it's
Mhm.
just been the one triggering event that happened down there is
Let's
primarily for the
just
parks.
exclude.
Mhm.
That,
Yeah,
yeah,
private-
that
And I'll
one
tell you
seems
another
to
one,
share
we
the
have to be
residential
concerned about
property.
is the screening of Roberts Hall.
We go from
Because
Mhm.
about 2 years ago, they did have a pop-up party that
Uh-huh.
I'm sure Miss Tender probably cleaned up for weeks of the things that were left behind.
I sat across the street in our restaurant in the dark, watching what was going in and what was coming out.
And that's
You then got a call and,
where you had 8
well,
people out.
I had already done a background check on that guy,
Right.
and he'd just gotten out of prison. And since, and you know this, he's back in prison forever because he killed 5 people in Panama City just 2 years ago.
That's a
The
terrible,
same guy
terrible story, Mr.
holding the, I know, but I'm saying the background check of these people is imperative.
And that's
To
why.
save us a lot of-
Robert's Rule of Order, because that is, if they tried to come in and host an event, and that's why that 45 days is in there, they would have to make application to give us time to research who they are and find out the background you found out, and because, you know, it kind of all travels together.
I can guarantee you the person who schedules the parties now is anal about that. She gets together with a powwow, everybody try to search this person. That,
Right.
I can assure you that'll never happen over there again.
Yeah,
Because
that was not pleasant. Right?
when they were patting down for guns, you knew you had a problem.
That's first clue, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, I just want to make sure that this is to your satisfaction, where
I'm
you think this
100%
would help
good.
prevent another incident to happen like in
I think
Alabama.
I'm putting the wording in there about excluding the private residents or private properties. I'm good with that. And then let us enforce Florida state statute if the roads get blocked. But if it is going to be a large event and they ask for city services,
Mhm.
like that wedding, then at that point we can help them. So I'm 100% good.
Let's still do a free permit on that too.
And free, yes.
Yeah,
If it's
Because
a
it wouldn't
resident-
apply, because it's
Wouldn't apply.
private.
Yeah,
So
they're not
they
gonna
would-
come in.
They would come and get,
I got you.
they'd come get services, but they wouldn't
Right.
necessarily
And
get.
We
can
need
that-
to exclude private.
To exclude private property, can that be done in layman's terms? No fancy
I think
therefores and
that-
thereafter.
Short sentence and
Whatever.
dot.
Just
I mean,
short and
let's be
sweet.
clear, I mean, we're excluding private residential property or all private property, because again, there's a lot of,
See,
I mean, what I'm
now,
hearing is we're getting complaints from private residential property. I don't want you to mess
We
with
got
my
one
Let's
house.
just do residential. Let's just do
I think
residential.
so we got one complaint from.
I mean, what if someone has a 10-acre lot and they
No,
want to go to a
talking to the
bonfire
zone.
after a football game or something? No one, nobody care about that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So they have enough room to park,
Yeah,
right?
so exclude private residential property, and then we'll do the event 50 to 100 is small. That way anything under 50, whether you're on a park or anything, doesn't apply.
And we're taking out organized,
And that's, yeah,
okay,
That's it.
and then anything else that we need to.
Everybody else good with
I'm
everything?
thrilled with that. Once we get rid of the private property,
Yeah,
I think the
that was-
emails
I think
will
that's
stop
what I
coming.
heard from everybody, don't you?
yeah.
and we can,
Yeah.
We'll follow on Florida statute
Yep.
for anything that hinders roads.
yeah, and that's, since we're regulating less than, and not more, we can still do it on Tuesday. We don't have to re-advertise or anything. So.
Yeah, Tim.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Tim,
yeah.
yeah.
Good
He's a
dude.
good guy, great guy, yeah.
I
Great guy.
feel a whole lot better. 'Cause I'm not gonna lie to you. This was bugging me, and I felt it was really important that we had to have something in place. But you know, I think we all probably campaigned on this at one time that we were going to represent the residents.
Mhm.
You know, I want them
Heard
to
loud
know.
and clear too.
We hear you loud and clear. You hear us?
Yeah.
So I feel a lot better.
Were we on YouTube on this? 'Cause-
We will be.
be.
It's not live, but it will be.
Okay.
All right, well, thank everyone for attending our commissioner workshop session, and we'll see you all on
Just walking
Tuesday
around across
at
the street
4
for a
p.m.
little bit.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.